Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to IABC Asia Pacific's webinar on designing high-impact intranets for internal communicators. I'm Saima Sharif. I serve on the IABC APAC board as Director Professional Development. Apart from that, I'm a founder of Crimson, an internal communication agency, and I'm based in India. We are glad to have with us Rebecca Rogers. She's based in Brisbane, Australia, and she has over 14 years of experience in the corporate sector and over 10 years in consulting. In the corporate sector, she has worked with large globals, from large globals to small nonprofits. So she brings a whole lot of experience to us today. She has helped many teams to revitalize their intranets. Rebecca is the principal consultant at Step 2, a globally renowned intranet consulting company. She loves traveling and she has an 8-year-old son. And just a couple of points before I hand this over to Rebecca. You can ask your questions using the Q&A, which will pop up once you take your cursor down at the bottom of the screen, anytime during the webinar. But Rebecca will be answering these questions at the end of the presentation. Also, we are recording the presentation and we'll mail a link to you post this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Seema. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So thank you for the introduction and for having me along to this IABC webinar. High impact intranets engage employees. But what does that actually mean? It's not just about having a pretty intranet that looks great and visually appealing. It really needs to be useful and engaging and an essential business tool, helping staff do their jobs. But if you really want it to succeed, it must put the employee at the center, considering who they are, their environment, what motivates them, and how they work. There's a world of intranet possibilities out there, but it can't be rushed, and it's not a one-off project, as many of you would know. My name's Rebecca Rogers. This is what I do day in, day out. I have a passion for intranets and user experience, but I'd like to find out a little bit more about who you are and what your intranet's like. So before we go any further, we're going to create a poll. So have a think about your current intranet. And if you can describe it as best you can. The poll should be appearing on your screen now. So once we have a feel for where everyone's intranet is at, and the good news is your name isn't linked to this, so you can say whatever you like. We'll jump into the purposes of an intranet and showing you some examples from organisations across the globe. Okay, the poll's disappeared from my screen, so hopefully that means, great, we've got the options coming up. Okay, I guess the good news is that for those of you that have selected the first one, that you don't really want to talk about it, there'll be lots of examples today for you to take away from here. Okay. So let's jump in. A number of years ago, people asked us, what's the purpose of an intranet? So we created the 5 purposes. Content, one that you should all know well, could be good, bad, or ugly, but the intranet as a repository for information at both corporate level, but also at business unit level. Communication. The intranet is a rich internal communication channel that reaches all staff. A very important one for you, I imagine. The culture of an intranet. It should celebrate the culture of the organisation and support cultural change. By looking at someone's intranet, I should be able to tell the type of organisation I'm in. Collaboration and social. This is where the intranet helps connect staff with each other and helps them work better together. And then where intranets really shine, the activity side. So this is the intranet as a place for doing things, not just reading things, helping you do your job and be more efficient. Now, the first 3 we say are really the intranet fundamentals: content, communication, and culture. And then adding on to that is what we call intranet plus. So those of you that have the intranet that you don't want to talk about, start by getting those first 3 right, and then you can move on to collaboration and social and making the intranet more of a business tool. Now today I'm going to jump in and give you a lot of examples around each of these 5 purposes. You can see a lot more on our website, as well as we publish free articles every month. So starting with content. Now, content on your intranet, like I mentioned, could be good, bad, or ugly. Virgin Trains actually turned off their intranet and created a social intranet. They have 3,500 staff spread across the rail network, and 80% of those are frontline customer service staff. They already had really high staff engagement, but they wanted to go further. They wanted to promote that more adult to adult culture versus employer to employee or parent to child. So they decided to turn off their intranet. Now, before you all gasp, they decided to go mobile first with an app-based intranet and highly social mix of Yammer, which is shown on this screen at the moment, and apps. So both custom and third-party apps. At the moment, they've got 76% of their staff that are active on Yammer. So they created amazing apps. These are custom-built in-house app store, and each app is designed to help staff do their jobs better. But the piece that I particularly like and that's relevant for content is their resolution app. And this is available from the App Store, but it provides key information as well as the ability to report issues, and it enables onboard teams to quickly resolve those issues. As an example, the one on your screen at the moment is around cleaning. So what happens if someone vomits on a train? It actually gives you the guidance of what you should do in that instance, as well as giving you the ability to actually report that at the same time. Another example from QUT, this is Queensland University of Technology, is their what we call global local mix of content. Often what we find with content is there's lots of content in the organisation and they might be managed by multiple teams. And often those teams, unfortunately, don't necessarily want to work together to create great content for the end user. What QUT have actually done is created what they call global content. That's content that's useful for all staff. And that sits at the top of the page. And because they're in university and they're quite complex, just as complex as any big multinational, they have actually created local content. So for each campus, they can publish content at the bottom of the page. So what you'll see there is for the Caboolture campus. So they can create that content based on campus, based on faculty, or it could be for a particular audience. So what I'm going to get you to do now is rate your own intranet content. Thinking about how good it is, or how bad, or how ugly. And as you're actually going through and rating your intranet content, I'll talk through some practical actions of how you can improve your content. So the poll should be on your screen now as I'm talking through some practical actions. So some things that you can do to improve intranet content. You can conduct a review of your current intranet to identify strengths and weaknesses. Now, you don't need to start from a blank sheet of paper. We do an annual intranet review for organisations, or you can do these yourself. If findability is a problem, look to improving the structure, navigation, and design of the intranet to help staff find what they need. And don't forget to actually test it with your users. Improving search can be another idea. Oh, I've just seen the poll results. That's lovely to see that some of you have, actually most of you have a mixed bag, which is good news because it means you don't have to fix all the content. And for those of you that don't have content written for the online medium, that's quite an easy fix as well. Depending if you have a decentralized authorship model, providing your authors training for writing for the online medium or writing for the web is another useful way. So one of the third things that you can do to improve content is review and start with the most important content to your users. Sometimes it's really overwhelming, the amount of content that you have to review on your intranet. Often the HR content is the content that's used the most, and sometimes it's the content that's written the most badly out of all. Now I can say that, I used to be in HR, so I do know. We've got lots of articles on our website about how to improve the quality of content, as well as an A3 mind map of ideas that you might want to have a look at. So jumping into communications now as another purpose of the intranet. Don't forget, if you've got questions as we go along, please feel free to type them in the Q&A window as you remember. So what we're looking at here is Visa's news page. What we're seeing in a lot of intranets now is not only is news coming to the homepage, organisations are also creating a news archive or a news hub that actually contains all of the news items, videos, feeds in from outside, what other organisations are saying about yours, feeds from social media. IMF are showing the fundamentals of modern intranet news with imagery, videos, likes and comments. And this is starting to set the benchmark for new intranets. All of these are becoming the fundamental. Now on to something a little different with Commonwealth Bank. This is new and it won one of our Intranet Innovation Awards this year. As many of you can imagine or would know, redesigning an intranet is a really big project and all of its parts, especially in a bank. So CBA decided to take a slightly different approach. Sometimes it's about trying something new based on what you know works. What you're seeing at the moment is their homepage, and their homepage is very much news-based. You'll see the navigation down the left-hand side, and quite uniquely, ComNet, the little dinosaur in the bottom left, is actually a link off to their old intranet. So they didn't decide to do everything all at once. They decided to tackle a smaller part first, and that was communication. This was driven by the comms team. The radically new approach that they're taking to delivering content, instead of a traditional information architecture, they've actually used a music metaphor to structure stuff. So albums, tracks, etc. This is extremely experimental and it's early days. At the moment, they've only applied this to news. So time will tell. Stay tuned for this one. One thing I particularly like about what Commonwealth Bank have done is their bespoke authoring environment. It's reminiscent of LinkedIn and other very simple, clean authoring environments. It's extremely simplified for authors, and it makes it super easy to create a news story. So as an example, what you're seeing on your screen at the moment is an author can actually create a news story. They see across the bottom of the screen each of the areas as they pass through. And it makes it simple for authors to do the right thing. As an example, when they upload an image, it has a special image processing functionality that's been critical to enabling any author to easily optimize the visual element of their story. So no more fuzzy images, and images that actually fit the design well. And it also embeds creation of metadata into the process. To finish off the communications area with Heineken and the Green Room. The Green Room's Heineken's brand comms channel. It's replacing existing paper newsletters, and content is user-generated with the help of a central team. Stories are also shared externally, and 60% of the items go to both internal and external. Now, I'll share a video with you to let them tell you more.
Heineken is one of the largest brands in the world. 87% of employees are proud to work for Heineken. 79% say their social circle is influenced by what they say. 30% of employees proactively share content on social media every month. The challenge was to turn sharing into advocacy, to help create genuine ambassadors for the company in all markets. That meant giving employees not only the right content to share, but also an interactive tool to share it from. It meant reinventing the voice of the brand from being a third-person driven narrative to a reporter-driven story.
Hi everyone, I'm Kimra Margopi. I'm Valentina.
I'm Patrick Villemin.
I'm Daniela.
I'm Holly Bostock, and I'm reporting from Forum 2014.
Our solution was an interactive story platform, The Green Room, finding the real stories behind the brand and giving them not only a voice and a face, but also a home.
Let me show you.
Hi, welcome to The Green Room, Heineken's new online magazine for employees, featuring all of the coolest stories. We've got videos, photography, blogs, fact cards, and it's all made by employees for employees.
We trained and equipped Heineken employees with the tools and resources they needed to tell and create stories. We built an online social platform where those stories could be shared, and we created fact cards so employees had, at the touch of a button, the insights and the knowledge to tell the stories.
Hi, I'm a fact card. Am I on?
Oh, go ahead.
I've got cool facts on the front. And when you flip me over, there's great info there as well.
We embarked on a program to encourage people to tell and share their stories.
You can see the green room on your mobile device, no matter where you are.
ensuring the site was open to the public, allowing anyone to take a peek behind the Heineken curtain. The results? The average employee is visiting 10 pieces of content. 70% of employees in the Netherlands have shared content, 41% of these on Facebook. Employees have described it as the best platform ever for engaging employees, friendly, innovating, and user-friendly, and it brings to life the true personality of the brand. The Heineken Green Room is the next step in employee storytelling, building reputation, creating a genuinely authentic brand.
So send us an example of your work or anything else that you would like to cover. The next edition will be created soon.
And then so will the next and the next.
So don't wait, you might become the next Heineken reporter.
Abdelrahman, I have a question for you. For how long have you been working in the ballet field? In the ballet field, sorry. No, because you should say something.
I will translate for him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully that video came through okay. I didn't have anyone letting me know that they couldn't see it. So it's now time to rate your intranet as a communication channel.
Result, hello.
Okay, and as you're taking that poll, obviously depending where your communication is at in your organisation, we've got some practical actions that you might want to have a look at. So establish a communication strategy. Obviously you'll all have that, being we've got a whole lot of communicators on the line. Interesting. Having a look at the poll that's just come up. You've got news, but no one reads it, has hit the top. And second, your teams are the ones that publish the majority of information. And you think everyone reads it. It's pretty common for that to happen in organisations. We see that a lot. I'm guessing one of the questions that might come up is how we actually increase the usefulness of news. So another action, improving the design of homepage news to better engage staff in that two-way conversation. Likes and comments is a good way of starting, but also targeting news to a specific audience. And looking at delivering a better digital communications channel that actually starts to reach all staff, including mobile. Now, this may be out of your control depending on your organisation's stand on mobile, but what we're seeing is a dramatic increase in readership of news when it's delivered to people's mobile devices. So jumping up next is ANZ. And ANZ's rolled out a social network to all their staff called Max Connect. Now, Max Connect sits alongside their intranet, also named Max. And this isn't a story about social tools, but instead it's a story about the textbook way that they actually employed these tools. The most active community is the branch network for frontline staff. Staff engagement with the platform is 73% of staff are actually participating, with 87% of ANZ's top 200 leaders are active in the space, which is pretty amazing. 14% of all staff participate at least once a month. And for every question, there are approximately 2.5 answers, and questions are resolved within 16 hours of being posted in the Australian branch network. On average, there are 7 answers to any question. Now, ongoing effort was put into communicating the business value of social tools, and that's really prominent with that very high senior leadership engagement. Lots of resources for end users as well as community managers were created. Okay, so it's now time to rate your intranet as a collaboration tool. And while you're voting, some practical ways you can improve collaboration in your organisation. Understand the collaboration activity that's happening at the moment. It doesn't necessarily need to be using social tools. It could be that people are collaborating face-to-face, over the phone, via email. It could be project collaboration is happening through shared drives and email and face-to-face meetings. Start by having a look at all of the different ways people are collaborating, and then look at the tools and how they can actually support that collaboration that already exists. Integrate any social collaboration tools into the intranet to foster adoption and use. Just looking at the poll results, that's again pretty common. Just over half of you with no collaboration at the moment, or online collaboration, I should say. It's really great to see that some of you have identified pockets of collaboration within the business, which means that you can quite easily bolster that. So back to our practical actions, integrating social and collaboration tools into the intranet to foster adoption and use. What we find often is that there are many collaboration tools that sit outside of the intranet. People have to know that Yammer exists, or that you've got another collaboration space sitting somewhere, and they might only find out about it through someone else letting them know or telling them. Often they sit quite separate. What we suggest is that you actually create an integration between the two. That could be as simple as a link off from your homepage, or it could actually be something more sophisticated, showing feeds through to the homepage, or showing people links off to the collaboration spaces that they're a member of, or that they might be interested in based on their particular role in the organisation. And look at delivering modern collaboration and social tools to frontline staff to help them support each other. One thing with any of you in organisations with lots of frontline staff that aren't necessarily connected, or might be or might be front-facing staff, giving them a way to actually ask people questions. These work particularly well in contact centres, or as we saw with ANZ, with those in a branch. We're now going to jump to the cultural side of intranets, celebrating the current culture of the organisation and supporting cultural change. Coles delivered My Coles to their 100,000 plus staff in stores who had no connectivity previously at all. The goal was to increase employee engagement in order to improve customer satisfaction. It provided online payslip, leave form, news, and staff rewards. These were the things that their staff really cared about. And it came along with a great change program. Another example was an intranet we launched for Wesley Mission Queensland. Now, Wesley Mission have a number of front-facing staff, personal carers, child carers, nurses, and they did most of their work day in, day out via mobile. They never visited the intranet. And so we created a mobile interface, which you'll see on the right-hand side, which actually gave them a place to create their own messages. Rather than formal news, we made it more informal. They felt like they were creating a message on a message board, in general social media, or they used to actually stick these messages up on hard copy boards around their particular facility. And with Heritage Bank, one of the things we found when we went in there, first off, the only thing that actually worked on their intranet was the fact that they announced people's birthdays and anniversaries. Now, whilst this may not work for you, it was the favourite thing from the old intranet. The CEO actually called each person individually on their birthday or on their anniversary to say, happy birthday or congratulations. So now back over to you. Does the intranet reflect the culture and identity of your organisation? Is it used as a change mechanism? Just while we're waiting for that poll to pop up. Okay, while we're waiting for that poll to pop up around culture, I'll just go through a few things that you could do to improve the culture of your intranet. Think about using the homepage as a central place to celebrate staff achievements. Many of you at the moment will have awards ceremonies or other ways that you celebrate achievements. Why not promote those to your homepage to build a sense of community? Highlight the organisational goals and initiatives to the intranet to provide staff direction and motivation. And look at the branding. Make sure the branding on your intranet fosters the identity of your organisation. Whilst you might see some examples of other people's intranets and not love them, as long as it works for your organisation and embodies the culture and the feel of that organisation, you've done a good job. Okay, not sure we got, oh, we do have that poll. Okay. Right, great. So this is, we've jumped polls, but that's okay. This is the poll to see if the intranet is a place that helps you do your job. That's fantastic, but it seems like for many of you, just over half of you, that the intranet is a place to help you do your job, that there are some processes that have been made easier, So that's quite unique. Some organisations really struggle with that activity side of the intranet. So on that, let's have a look at what some organisations have actually done to turn the intranet into a key business tool, or make the intranet a place for doing things and not just reading things. So on your screen, you'll see Mark. Mark's an engineer at Cowie, and in this picture, he's actually inspecting one of the pylons on the Great Belt Bridge in Denmark. So you can see he does have his device there, and I'm assured it is also tethered to him as he is tethered to the bridge. Now, previously, what Mark would have to do is he'd also have a piece of paper and a pen, and he would be marking off a checklist and scribbling notes as he actually inspected the bridge. So Cowie went one better than that. They created the Field Notes app. So on his device, Mark can actually now create a field note as he's going that contains his observations, annotations that he's made in the field, as well as making the most of the device and being able to actually create a map of exactly where he is. Now, what Mark used to have to do when he went back to the office was he would create a Word document based on his scribbles. Now, what happens is this is actually turned into an automatic report based on his field notes and his observations, and that's then linked into their project sites for each of the individual projects. So in this case, the bridge. I know you've had Telstra Speak before, so some of you may have actually seen this one. This is Telstra's HR landing page. Unlike any you've probably seen before. Rather than making you go into different parts of your HRIS system, which may be a little clunky or hard to use, you also may need to remember your password each time you go in. For this page, it's all about providing key information right away in order to reduce calls to the HR Service Centre. We designed a similar concept for Suncorp, as well as for Suncorp leaders. And in all of these cases, what we were looking at is what is the information that sits in other systems, in Suncorp's case, up to 6 other systems, and presenting that in one place, based on what people need. In Telstra's case, they presented their leave in hours. For Suncorp, staff actually wanted to know their leave in days because they were sick of pulling out a calculator every time they had to look at their leave. The other side of it is actually having the actions inline the page, being able to apply for leave quickly and easily. Now, we've already done the poll on helping you do your job, but we might flick back to the collaboration poll if possible, Seema, as I go through the actions. So some of the things that you can do to understand and move your intranet more into a business tool. Start by conducting field research, understanding what those frontline needs and, more importantly, challenges actually are. What are you trying to support? Implement an online form capability to improve efficiency and streamline processes. It does seem like a number of you are already doing this. And a very simple one, provide key business system access from the homepage. Rather than just a bunch of quick links, actually targeting those based on who you are or where you work is another great idea. So it doesn't matter where you're at on the 5 purposes. More importantly, what it's about is understanding where you're at, where you want to be, and then how you're actually going to get there. And you can get some help in figuring out what others have done and the best way of doing that. So summarizing what we've gone through so far, making it happen, creating that engaging, essential intranet. You have to start by understanding your workforce needs. Get out in the field, understand your frontline staff, not just those that are sitting in an office, whatever industry you might be in. Have a clear digital workplace strategy. Not just a vision that you can communicate to senior leaders and stakeholders, but also a strategy that helps you request budget and resources for what's to come. And most importantly, the roadmap that's actually going to tell you how you're going to get there. Swisscom actually mapped this journey. They've had a very stable team, a strong agile methodology, and an ongoing budget. But to get this ongoing budget, they were clearly delivering benefits and showcasing what those benefits were at each stage. Take ownership of your employee experience. Based on your knowledge of who your employees are and their needs, do the hard work for them. In Swisscom's case, they created their personalised homepage, starting with communications, followed by blog posts, and then a corporate calendar. Comms have control over what appears where, and also what's sticky. Along with comms, they've also created a workspace that gives you access to what you need to do your job. Establish robust governance. Governance is about all these things and more. And whilst we don't have time today, we've created an intranet operating model that outlines all the elements involved in successfully governing and growing an intranet. At a high level, it provides a framework for a strategic approach to governance, as well as a structure. Take every small opportunity to improve your digital employee experience. Many of you will be familiar with a user-centered design approach, an intranet that's designed by users for users. Lots of hands-on activities, starting with staff needs and working through creating a great information architecture, testing it, and a great design, and testing that also. Look at the bigger picture. Understand what the issues are within your organisation. Then take a frictionless, effortless experience for the workforce. We're here to design intranets that delight rather than frustrate. I know I've covered a lot today, so if you want to see or hear any more about what others are doing in the workplace, getting some great ideas, there's a discount code here, which I'll also provide at the end of the session for our digital workplace showcase report. And as I mentioned earlier, we've created lots and lots of resources, many of them free, including articles that we create on a regular basis. And we share with our Intranet Leadership Forum, which is a professional community, much like yours, for intranet managers and their teams. It's great to see that intranets are finally catching up to the web. They're finally creating a digital user experience that we all expect inside our organizations as well as outside. It's great to have a future vision and dream big, but make sure you deliver often to your organization. Thank you all very much for having me today. And I've seen a bunch of questions popping through as I've gone through, so I will answer those now. Okay, one question that came through, someone's working for a company that creates content for a client intranet, but it hasn't gained any interest, getting more traction. One thing that applies to content and news, many people ask me, how do I get people to come to my intranet? Do I put footy tipping on the homepage? Do I make it look better? Ultimately, people will come to your intranet if it's useful. So at the end of the day, the most important thing to do is to understand what your user needs are, what questions they have, what they're searching for on the intranet at the moment, and make sure your intranet delivers to those. Okay. The role of enterprise social media in communication with an organization. This is a big one. This is a topic in itself. We did touch on social. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I'm happy to delve into that one a little bit more. We're actually seeing it does depend on the type of organization you're in. As you saw with the ANZ example, enterprise social media has taken off. But it really does depend on the maturity of your organization. It depends on what type of organization you're in and who your audience is in order for it to be a success. There was a question around CBA's records and tracks concept. Feedback from employees in the early days, they love the look and feel of it. It's working quite well in terms of news. What people are particularly interested in is how that's now going to translate into content. And to be honest, so am I. It is quite experimental. Users are particularly liking the interface and how clean and easy it is to work within. Yeah, I can share the Green Room video link. Is video a better way to go for intranet news? Again, it does depend on your audience. We're still finding a mix of both text, messaging, and video is working in organizations rather than a one-size-fits-all. So actually having that mixed media approach is working well. The thing with video that most of you will know that you also need to keep in mind is the production costs, although why I showed you Heineken was I particularly like the approach that they've taken to actually getting their employees to create the news. Okay, having trouble getting people to engage on Yammer. With any social or collaboration tool, again, it comes back to the support for the tool. It also comes back to you actually having a need out there. We're seeing a lot of people putting out Yammer without necessarily having a strategy behind it. And employees are just seeing it as another tool. And they're not sure, well, when do I use Yammer versus when do I use instant messaging? What's the difference between that and what's on the intranet? What's via email? So actually making it clear and easy for employees to understand the purposes of each of these tools. Something else that I've seen work really well with tools like Yammer is actually combining content and social in one. So as an example, in a school that I'm working in at the moment, we have information around working with students with disabilities. And there's lots of content on that. But there's also a Yammer community that has discussions and asks questions about working with children with disabilities. We've actually combined that Yammer feed with the content page. So when you go to search the intranet for working with children with disabilities, up comes the content page, and alongside that is actually the Yammer feed. Now, people who didn't actually use Yammer before, we're now seeing them actually engage with it, because before it sat isolated by itself, whereas now it's actually a bit more integrated. That's one technique. There are lots of others. It almost sounds like, from the questions that are coming through, that you may actually need a session just on social, which we're happy to do. Now I'm just reading the last question that's come through. In terms of the question around SAP success factor as a possible technology to replace the intranet, we're vendor neutral, so we don't subscribe to any particular technology. But one thing I would suggest is that you sit down and understand, what are your requirements for an intranet? What do you actually need in terms of the 5 purposes: content, communication, collaboration, culture, and activity? What are your organisation needs? And then actually evaluate the tool against those. Hopefully that helps. I think I managed to cover off all of the questions, but we do have a few more minutes left if there were any more. I've also got my contact details up on the screen, so feel free to drop me a line if you'd like a copy of any of the screenshots, or if you wanted to ask any more in-depth questions, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions there, Rebecca. I think we are now at the end of the webinar, and thank you so much. I mean, I think it was a very insightful presentation, some great examples there. And so many of us, I believe, will be able to use the toolkit and the examples. So we are seemingly much wiser about intranet. It will definitely help us launch or relaunch our intranets in our workplaces. And before we end, I would like to point out that we will be mailing you a recording of this webinar along with the feedback form. So do look out for that mail. I think that's it. Rebecca, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me. I know I covered a lot in a short space of time.
I think it was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
Right. Thank you.